Okay, how exciting. We've got our first little bit of solder work, and that's going to involve prepping the blue Alps so that it's ready to install on the chassis. So we're going to get the blue PCB installed on it.
It's this guy right here.
And we're going to get these triple blue junctions installed as well, and then we're going to bolt it up to the chassis. Now, pay attention. There's only one way to install everything onto the blue Alps. Everything else will be a real problem and will involve waiting for a replacement PCB and Alps. So we're going to show you exactly how to orient it. Just make sure that you're wide awake for this section. Okay, there's any number of ways to mess this up, but let's just do it step by step and we won't have any problems. So the first thing is to make sure we prep these little blue junctions. So back all of the set screws out, and then take something like a little awl and just make sure that the receiving tab is open like that. And now they're ready to go. And it can only go on one way.
Well, they can go on any number of ways, but most of them are wrong.
Okay, fair enough, Charles. So get your let's get this little protector off so that we can show everybody. Now, sometimes the pins might be a little tiny bent, and now is the time to grab a little small pair of flat nose pliers
and carefully make an adjustment. You don't want to bend it too far in any direction.
Yeah, you're just going to make a very small, gentle adjustment. And the orientation of this is like this. So all of the writing goes down like this, and the board goes on so that it's basically centered. Now, if it doesn't quite fit on, that's probably because you've got a little misalignment with your pins, and you can go back and take a look at it and see where you're out. So I can see that we're just a little bit off on the back row, so I'm just going to adjust everything a little tiny bit. And now we'll fit it again, and take your time. Sometimes this is going to be a little fussy. Now, if you've got it on right, you're going to be centered. You see that? Okay, everybody's got that. And you're going to be almost
flush with the board on the back.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead and turn your soldering iron to about 360°C, which is about 680 Fahrenheit. And we're going to put a little tiny bit of flux on each and every one of these pads that we're going to solder. There's 6 of them.
Just a little dab each.
Yeah, a little bit of flux goes a long way, and if you use a very small amount, you won't have a big issue with cleanup later on. Okay, now if you're just starting soldering for the day, make sure your soldering iron is well and truly warmed up. So it might be a good time to go and grab a cup of coffee and come back, and you'll be ready to go. Now, there is a how-to series for soldering. So if you're just not 100% sure about what you're doing, run through the how-to series on soldering, and there's actually a kit available in the store that's very affordable that you can use to practice.
And we'll show you one pin right now here and then let you do the rest.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to come in. You're going to press a little bit firmly, and you're going to put a drop of solder. As soon as it starts to melt really well, you're going to fill, hold for half a second, and release. And if your solder tip is dirty, you're definitely going, let me get my, normally this does not sit up on the bench, but this is my little cleaner. And you notice how the tip is nice and clean and tinned. I've got a blob of solder on here. Now, I soldered over on this corner. I'm going to move over onto this corner. So whenever you can distribute the heat around a little bit. So I put a drop of solder. It's starting to flow. I'm going to fill. I'm going to hold for half a second, and I'm going to let go. And that's all there is to it. You don't want to put excess solder here because the pads are very close to each other. So be very careful about that. And I think you know what you're doing. I'll see you back in just a minute. Okay, let me get this right up on camera so you can take a look at it. So we've got nice flattened volcanoes. So we had good flow and wet out of the solder. And that makes for a very good electrical connection. Now, when you're done a segment soldering, it's always good practice to take a look and make sure that you've got everything soldered in nice and neatly. It's better and much easier to come along if you're a little short on some solder or you're not 100% sure you did a good job, to fix it now rather than later on after the amp is built and you have a problem. Okay, so we're almost done this segment. Now, the next thing we've got to do is get these 3 junctions in place. Okay, so this is how they install. I've got one clipped on to hold it while we solder, and that's why we put these little alligator clips into your kit. They're going to be great and useful for making up leads and things like that after you're done building, but for now they're great as little mini clamps. So I'm going to put a little tiny bit of solder, just like we did on the leads of the Alps pot. And you can probably sneak a little bit into the part that you're not going to solder right away, the clamp part.
Yeah, but don't solder your clamp to it.
No, and I'll show you how to do that in a split second. So we're going to stay at, these small parts are so hard to show on camera, but
I'll see if I can zoom in whenever I edit the video here.
yeah, I'm going to stay, I think we probably can bring the camera in. There we go. I'm going to stay at 360 C, which is 680 Fahrenheit, and we're going to solder them in just like we did the PCB. So we're going to put a little bit of solder on our clean and tinned tip, and we're just going to hold, I'm going to hold this steady with a finger, and I'm going to come in here and I'm going to press a little bit, and I'm going to put a drop of solder in there. That really helps make the heat connection. And now I'm filling because it's flowing nicely. Hold for a second and I'm out. Now,
with these blue junctions, you have to be careful that you don't flow too much solder, because they can actually flow right inside the junction and just lock it up entirely.
Right. Same thing over here. And it's flowing, and we're going to hold for a second, and Bob's your uncle. Now, we only have to wait a second for the solder to cool off enough that we can safely pull off the clamp, and then you can go ahead and do the center, and then you can do the same, exactly the same procedure on the other side. And I'll meet you back in a minute. Okay, let's just take a look at the completed assembly. So the writing or the printing is on the Alps side, so this, and the PCB is pretty close to flush to the back of the Alps pot, and your 3 junctions are over here towards the inside. So let's get it installed. So go ahead and put the washer on. That'll just help space it off a little bit nicer. And orient your chassis so that the down, you can see there's a gap on our little dial. So this is going to be the bottom. And it just mounts up, nutted on by hand.
It's going to be a little bit tricky.
Take your time, as always, and
there we go.
so you're going to need a 7/16 or 11 millimeter socket, and you're going to need a deep socket. And you don't really want to come in here with some kind of monkeyed up wrench.
You'll scratch right up the front there.
Yeah, well, and like I like to say, you'll scratch it to ratchet, and you definitely don't want to do that to your front. So use the right tool for the job. And this is a job where we're going to torque it down very carefully so that it's on nice and snug.
There's an alignment pin on it that should be seated in a hole there for it to be fully mounted, and that should stop it from turning around back and forth, so it doesn't have to be torqued down hard.
No. So just notice how I'm holding the wrench and just giving it a little tightening, and that's it. Bob's your uncle. Okay, well done, everyone.